everybody, Aimer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 4, Episode 23, which is called The Crane. So Jim goes to an art store's office for instructions this time. The mission is to restore the democratic government of the country of Lagosia by preventing the execution of rebel leader Constantine and dealing with current military leaders General Kozani and Colonel Strabo. We get dossiers this time with the usual crew, plus a driver named Clay, who's not credited for some reason, and the Globe Repertory. After a brief apartment scene, we move to Lagosia, where Kozani tells Strabo to execute Constantine as soon as he arrives in the capital, foregoing a trial because Constantine wants them dead, and the only way for them to be safe is to kill him first. The IMF and the crew from the repertory set up as a construction crew along the path that Constantine's armored car is traveling, and Jim shows up with an urgent dispatch for Kozani, which turns out to be a loaded gun. Jim says he was a supporter of the rebels and Constantine until he just learned that Constantine sold out to the military junta and made a deal to join them. Strabo and Kozani both deny any knowledge of it, as Jim puts a device on Kozani's phone quietly. Officer Willie arrives and knocks Jim out, taking him to detention. As the armored truck approaches, Clay signals the team, who move quickly to get into position and set off what looks like an ambush. Paris shoots a special gun into the truck with knockout gas, and Strabo is informed about it, putting his police force in motion quickly. Barney lowers a cherry picker down, and Constantine is put in it, elevating him into the air. Paris and Barney head conspicuously into a nearby warehouse to lead the cops away from the crane and cleverly hide to cover their tracks, leaving the area with Clay and donning officers' uniforms to get past Strabo's blockade. Kozani tells Jim that Constantine has escaped, which wouldn't have taken place had there really been a deal. There would have been no need for an escape. Kozani notes that Jim seemed relieved but not surprised about the escape, which further confuses the issue about Jim's motivations here. Kozani calls Strabo, and the call is intercepted by Willie thanks to the IMF's device. Willie worries that the other members haven't arrived back at their warehouse yet, but they finally do show, and Paris speaks to Kozani as Strabo, telling Kozani he received a call from Constantine who wants to meet and discuss his surrender. Kozani and his assistant are surprised at this turn of events and that Strabo would be in favor of meeting with him. So Kozani's man goes to the proposed meeting place, finding it predictably booby-trapped, and finds a hidden room containing a printing press. Running it, he finds a poster indicating that Strabo and Constantine have agreed to eliminate Kozani and rule together. And the man reports back that clearly the whole thing was a trap to kill Kozani. Strabo's men continue searching the area as he takes a funny look up at the crane, but then suddenly Paris calls as Constantine, saying that he knows there's no way out, he's tired of the fighting, and just wants to leave the country in peace. He instructs Strabo to meet him at a town square in 20 minutes, alone. Kozani talks to Jim again and shows him the poster, but Jim is nonplussed, figuring that no matter what, Kozani's not sincere about peace, despite his claims that he's tired of war too. Kozani agrees to go see Constantine alone with Jim. Jim says he'll only do it if Kozani puts an offer in writing that there will be peace and general amnesty, and no more Strabo. Kozani agrees and starts writing. Strabo waits for Constantine in the square, and Paris arrives as Constantine's envoy. After some banter, Paris gets into Strabo's car and directs him down into a manhole, where Willie knocks him out and they take him to a nearby office, seating him in a chair and preparing for a Constantine mask for him. Strabo, as Constantine, wakes up, and Paris points out Clay behind him with a shotgun. Paris tells him to sit and wait for Kozani and warns him to just listen quietly until Kozani's finished talking. Kozani arrives with Jim. They are also brought into the room. Kozani passes over the offer as Jim outlined and tells Constantine to accept it, as Strabo is not to be trusted. Jim opens a hidden drawer with a pistol and leaves the room, and as Kozani continues to push his deal and is confused by Constantine's silence. Strabo, as Constantine, picks up the pistol and shoots the two-way mirror behind him, removing the mask and reminding Kozani of his words earlier in the day. When someone wants you dead, kill them first. Barney lowers the crane and releases Constantine as a predictable gunshot is heard. Constantine tells Jim that his people can handle Strabo and his men, and the IMF head away. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a B-. I'm a little bit torn about it in two different directions, but I'll kind of lay it out for you and lay out my thoughts here. This is a pure A-Team episode. It's just the guys, and there's explosions and fighting and a whole bunch of, it's a very testosterone-filled episode, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know and I acknowledge that there is a nostalgia filter here for me. This is, again, one of the very first episodes of Mission that I ever saw back in the late 80s. And I remember watching it, and I, again, was just so, I don't know why. It seems like such a small thing, but I was just amazed at this idea that, oh my God, they're hiding this guy in the crane. That is so cool. And I do think that, visually, that's great. Just as an idea, the idea of hiding something in plain sight almost, relatively speaking here, it's very, very unique. And it reminds me a little bit about how they did things back in the episode from a little while ago called The Double Circle, where, a guy is, in very, very familiar surroundings, but he doesn't realize, because of, the IMF's chicanery, that, he's on a different floor of the apartment building, with the whole idea of people see what they expect to see. Oh, it's a crane, right? Whatever. So in the middle of a construction zone, well, it belongs there, right? So I really do love that. And again, this episode has a little bit, it takes me back a little bit to being younger and really, really appreciating and just the entertainment value of TV shows. And so I do acknowledge that. And that is unique for this episode. I really, really like it. It's an earned win for the team. The team has to do a lot of interesting work to fulfill the mission, such as it is, and the teamwork is quite good. Also, good. I like the guest stars. I think that Carl Betts as Kazani and Felice Orlandi as Estrabo, good actors, very, very believable in their roles. We will see them again in future episodes. I wouldn't say that they were great. There's not really a lot of opportunity for, characterization and character development in a plot like this. So, there's not a lot there, but for the roles that they have, I think that they filled them pretty well. Moving on from that, I'm going to do a little bit of point counterpoint. And combined with my look back at previous episodes. This is a straight separate and mislead plot. At first I looked back and I said, as a counter to my nostalgia filter, I said, this is a really, really cookie cutter plot. I'm going to walk that back a little bit. It does have some cookie cutter features. It's not quite as cookie cutter as I thought it was. There's much more, there's much better examples of that we're going to see in other seasons. I commented, the one that I want to look back at a little bit is the first separate and mislead plot that they did on the show. And that was right back at the beginning of Season 2 for the episode called The Widow. And you can go back and look at that on my Season 2 playlist, in which you have two guys who are working together, towards a common goal. And the IMF manages to find a way to physically separate them, use some gadgetry in order to believe that one of them has, turned on the other, or something has happened to that other guy or whatever, and they just mislead them in two different directions in order to accomplish their goal. That's the basis of the separate and mislead plot. And that's exactly what happens here. And I remember commenting in that episode that, the IMF just seems to be able to do it a little bit too easily. And I feel that a little bit in this episode as well. These guys are part of a military junta that have been fighting against rebel forces were trying to reestablish democracy in this country, apparently. And apparently this war has been going on for a long time, right? Kazani comments offhandedly, extemporaneously, no reason to disbelieve him, that he's tired of the war. It's obviously been going on for a while. So Strabo and Kazani have been together for a while. It's not like these guys are just, casual acquaintances or anything like that. Even in the episode The Widow, it's not clear how long the two antagonists had been partners. But in this case, they've obviously been together for a while. So I don't like the way that the IMF is able to, in a matter of hours, literally, separate two guys, turn them against each other to the extent that they're ready to kill each other, after they've been, thick as thieves for years. Okay? That is problematic to me in these separate and mislead plots. That said, that I guess is my counterpoint. I probably should have made the point first. The point to make here is that the way that the IMF does it is fairly clever. They do what they have to do, which is to separate the two physically. Strabo's going out and actually looking for Constantine. Kazani is the general of the army, and he's sitting in his office and kind of, doing his thing. And then using their technology, impersonating Strabo, having Paris do that, right? And then setting up this chain of events where Strabo, ostensibly, asks Kazani, let's meet Constantine at this place. And then it turns out that it's booby-trapped, and and there's a hidden room where there's this printing press where they're printing flyers saying that Strabo and Constantine have made a deal. And it starts, of course, with Jim previous to that. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. With Jim previous to that saying, I know you've made a deal with Constantine. Then after that, of course, Kazani is convinced, oh my gosh, Strabo tried to kill me. And so he's ready to deal with Constantine, just based on Jim's word that, I know what's going on here. And then Jim tells him to put the offer in writing. They present it to Strabo, and Strabo realizes, okay, he's been had, now Kazani is ready to off me. And so now they've turned on each other. So it's clever, but I think what's really missing from it is that there's just not enough there for me to make that whole, turning, friends against each other so quickly. There's something missing. There's not enough foundation for me to believe that the IMF is able to pull that off so quickly. The way I see it, they finally captured this rebel leader. They're almost celebrating that, oh my gosh, the rebellion is going to be crushed and that sort of thing. I would think that these two guys would expect the rebels to make some kind of move and try and put the two against each other. Maybe I'm just, reading too much into it, but I would expect them to be on their toes. Kazani even mentions in the episode that, he had learned that there were different factions amongst the rebels who were probably jockeying for position. So it's not out of the realm of possibility or probability that they're going to try and make some move based on whatever happens to Constantine. So I don't know. I hope the point that I'm trying to make is coming across properly. I think that there should have been some more time devoted in this episode to laying a little bit of foundation about why Strabo and Kazani just choose to not trust each other, or to take a step back and say, hey, wait a minute, are we being played here? Maybe that's a better way I should talk about it. We looked in the previous episode, Orpheus. We had Albert Paulson's character, Bergman, who was being manipulated by the IMF. And he actually paused a few times and said, am I being played here? And that's good. I like that, because that's a sign that you've got good, smart villains. And that's what I like That generally leads to better episodes. Not that this is a bad episode, but I really, really would have liked that. It would have added a lot to the episode, I feel. Another counterpoint to what I said earlier. This is not as cookie cutter as I thought. I mentioned that before. But clearly one of the antagonists is going to die. You can kind of figure that from the very beginning where, now I've gotten to the point where, if you see multiple pictures in the dossiers about two guys who are working together, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be a separate and mislead, and one of those guys is not going to live until the end of the episode. That's just kind of how it is. Also going to add a late note that I realized. One of the things that's not good about this is Paris's sudden superhuman ability to imitate perfectly Strabo and Constantine without having met them or having listened to them. That's a bit of a flaw. I wish that it hadn't been quite that easy. Something that I actually didn't notice before, but I wanted to add it here. Weird. Just to kind of wrap this one up. What did Clay do that was so special? It's kind of weird when somebody gets their own picture in the dossier and they're not credited, and there's not even any explanation about why they're there. In the past, we've had episodes where we've had some specialists, like doctors and things like that, and they show a picture of, Dr. Green, is congratulated for his new research or something like that. So at least you have some idea what the person is there and what they might be there for. In this case, I actually had to look it up in the Mission Impossible dossier. Who is this guy and what is he there for? And it says in the dossier, there's Driver Clay. And I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe he's a stunt driver or he has some special driving ability, but he really doesn't. He's just there to kind of drive the IMF around. And I mean, he does a few other things, but there's nothing that he did that would separate him, for example, from the other guys who were in there from the Globe repertory. I just found that to be very, very, very odd. Just thought I'd point that out. Last point that I want to make. I said, in my recap that the mission was accomplished. I kind of don't, I'm kind of unsure about that, to be very honest with you. At the end, Constantine, who is dubbed, by the way, for some bizarre reason, I don't know what was wrong with Eric Mason, the actor who played Constantine. He says that his men can deal with Strabo and Strabo's men. I find that very, very odd. Here's why. Strabo is apparently the chief of the secret police, whereas Kazani is the general of the army. And it seems to me, I've never been involved with the military or with the police, as a member, but I would think that Strabo's men would be more loyal to Strabo, whereas Kazani, as an army general, he's kind of distant from his troops. He sits in his office, and his troops are all around, the soldiers, in the countryside or whatever. They probably never even met him. They don't know who he is. He's just a name. That's usually how I would think that it would work. Also, just because Kazani is gone and he's no longer the general of the army, there's got to be somebody else, right? Some other colonel is going to take over and then be the leader of the army and be promoted to general or whatever. It doesn't mean that the army is no longer there. Whereas, if Strabo were the one who were eliminated, well, there might be some issue with, who are the police going to take their orders from. It's a little weird about how exactly, Constantine is going to have an easier time dealing with Strabo. Maybe there are fewer of them, rather than, the amount of people that might be in the country's army. I suppose that's possible. That just seemed a little bit weird to me. So I just thought I would throw that out there. And I think that that's about it for this episode. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Please like this video, please like this review, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please leave your comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this episode. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.